All right, everybody, welcome back to the Acres of Diamonds podcast, where we like to have powerful conversations with interesting people. And today we have on Matt Roth to the podcast. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you very much.
No problem. So Matt has been within the medical industry, right, for a certain amount of time, and he's within sales and leadership. And so, Matt, before we kind of dive into the main concepts I wanted to hit on today, give a quick kind of brief background of your career kind of up to this point.
I've done almost every kind of job imaginable, and it's that proverbial reaching for the next rung, the next opportunity, from driving forklifts to working in factories. But each experience allowed me to take some knowledge and some experience and take that to the next round. And I spent a good amount of time in IT selling mainframes and high performance servers. The company I was working for at the time was having a rough time determining who they were every year, and our customers were noticing it. And so one of my buddies said, "You should check out this website. All the coveted medical device jobs are all in there." And I think took me 20 interviews with 20 different companies for someone to give me a chance to interview. And by the grace of God, I fell into medical device sales. I was with one company for 8 months, wasn't doing real well because the prior rep blew the territory up. So I did a lot of apologizing and trying to restore some faith in that brand. And then a new company here locally started up. Two sales guys, two young guys, got a chance to take over an Arthrex distributorship locally in Rochester and Buffalo. And they had seen my name on the sign-in list and said they were putting an all-star team together. So they asked me to join the team, and I've been there for 15 years. And I went from the sales consultant for Rochester to the director of sales for distal extremities. So that's hands and feet and, fracture, soft tissue repair, things like that. Company started with 5 people. I was employee number 4, and now we have 113.
Okay. Now,
yeah.
Now I think we would be doing a disservice to not mention Scott Gibbs in this.
Oh boy.
And so real quick, before Matt and I started recording here, Matt gave a kind of a brief story of how he met Scott. And Matt, I think you could just give another quick breakdown of that story, because I think this is a really cool way to understand how we never know how our life is going to change, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's going to change, who's going to have an impact on it. So explain that story again real quick.
Well, it ties in with the last part of what I was talking about with Arthrex. When I made the shift into leadership, I had to fly down to Naples, Florida for some training and onboarding and things like that. And I had to put a suit on. It wasn't something I was really accustomed to. I felt extremely awkward. Got on the plane and I sat down to Scott, and he looked at me and just shook his head with disgust and was like, "How come you couldn't have been like a hot blonde or something like that? You're the biggest guy on the airplane. The 2 biggest guys are sitting next to each other. This is going to be a disaster all the way to Atlanta." And my mouth just dropped, and he kind of gave me that smile. And we started talking and talked for 2.5 hours until we landed. And the conversation was so impactful, I hunted him down on LinkedIn to try and connect with him and stay in touch. So I don't want to give Scott a big head, but he's a pretty awesome guy.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm gonna also be a testament to that, right? Scott is an important man in my life, important mentor in my life. So, thank you, Coach Gibbs, for everything you've done for both Matt and myself, which Coach Gibbs actually helped me in the preparation of today's podcast. And what I did was I asked Scott yesterday, I said, "Scott, how do I get a better understanding of Matt Roth? How do I really understand who this man is?" And he recommended, he said, go on his Facebook and look at the energy that he's putting out. And so what we're going to do today is I basically went through some of Matt's recent posts on Facebook, and extremely powerful, brief, brilliant, and concise, to the point posts that really pack home an important message. And so, Matt, the first one that I wanted to talk about was your most recent one. And it stated, "We're all born with exactly what we need to be successful. The activation part is where people fall short. The blame game and finger pointing is what's holding you back. You need to own it all to move forward, to have it all. And so the one part in this that really kind of stuck out was this idea of activation, right? So can you describe or go into a little bit more depth when you say the activation part is where people fall short? What is that activation?
It's actually doing the things that you talk about. Um, and I'm going to unpack a lot of cliches here, but unfortunately, they all are really applicable. It's all about action. I mean, we all know people that want different but don't do anything different, and then you'll circle back with them 3 4 months, and they're in the same rut, same problem. And giving you a peek behind the curtain, all the posts, 99% of them are something about me that I just found impactful, either present day life or past life. And I was one of those guys. My upbringing was not awesome. So I did a lot of finger pointing and I did a lot of posing, um, trying to show people who I was, but I wasn't living that, kind of being a phony, a pretender. So there's a lot of dialing into, um, we're all born with challenges. We're all born with skill sets, but it's up to us to sharpen those skill sets and use them to our advantage to help other people, and playing the blame game and the finger pointing that just it keeps you held in place. You'll be in this karmic cosmic loop where you're continuing to circle around with the same problems, looking for solutions that aren't out here, they're here.
Yeah, and that's a really important piece too. I think the way you kind of said that, right? The solutions aren't necessarily out there, right? The solutions are more of this internal reflection or journey, right? So explain a little bit more about that, right? This idea of I've heard this actually in a past podcast we did with a mindfulness coach. She talked about working out versus working in, which I really like that idea. It just kind of made sense. So when you say kind of this internal journey, right? Explain a little bit more about that.
Well, it's all about the process, and the way I would categorize this is self ownership, and to be able to be completely honest with yourself, um, and work from the inside out. It's a journey that you have to take before you can really take a step forward. You have to be honest, come clean with the things that you need to take that clean step forward. Um, and I'll be honest, I was trained. I went through a program called Wake Up Warrior, and that was in 2017. And that was the whole premise. Like, one, all men suffer from the same stuff, not alone, get you to talking, but it was all about ownership. Like, if you're having problems in your marriage, first place you need to look is you. It's easy to point the finger at your wife, but you're probably the problem. How do you show up? Are there date nights? Do you do this? Do you do that? How do you show up with your kids? So everything starts with me. And if I'm correct and I have systems in place to help me get my day started, I'm not going to be a terrorist in my own home. So I'm owning all my stuff, and I can show up for my family and the people that I work with and my wife, and do my best and support and lead and all that fun stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that idea around ownership, right? Sometimes that's really difficult, right? To
Hmm.
own, right? To own, especially when something doesn't go the right way, right? And it's very easy, to your point, to say, well, it's probably because X, Y, and Z, right? And you point at
Yeah.
different variables when really, is it possible that there's some internal ownership that could have altered X, Y, and Z?
When something blows up, my first question is, what could I have done differently? And it's very impactful because it changes your mindset, and it can take you from a place of anger to like awareness quickly, recognizing that you're the one that stepped in it. It wasn't somebody else. It's your fault.
Yeah. And that actually, so this connects kind of to the second idea that I wanted to kind of hit on, and it was this idea about forgiveness, right? And I think forgiveness and ownership, are they pretty similar, right? I mean, is there an idea where, hey, I'm going to take ownership of that and I'm going to forgive myself of that, and now I'm going to start moving forward with it. Right? Is that kind of how can forgiveness and ownership kind of be married in the same world?
Um, they're both directly inwardly focused.
Mm.
And I didn't recognize this until recently. And like everybody else, I got banged up as a kid. You know, there's still scars that are limiting when you allow them. Um, but being able to forgive someone, it I see them almost as one and the same because forgiveness is for me. For the people that damaged me, the longer I hang on to it, the more I suffer. And there's a good chance that the people that were the perpetrators of these hurts from the past aren't even thinking about it anymore, or maybe not even aware. So hanging on to that is it's like a self-inflicted gunshot. You're really, if you don't let that go, it's going to leave a scar that doesn't heal. And I think that does tie into ownership, where I'm responsible for all of my actions. No one can make me do, say, act any way that I don't choose to. And it's just a way of being really, really clean with yourself and having that extreme individual self ownership.
Hmm. And I love the way you kind of said that, right? The longer you hold on, the longer you suffer, right?
Yeah,
Ultimately.
it is suffering, isn't it?
Yeah,
You really can.
it really is. And I think too, it's to a point, it's also we are allowing them to affect us, right? We are providing them the opportunity to have a negative effect or control on our behavior or our thoughts, which ultimately lead to our behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think the way that you kind of ended that was fantastic, right? Where you say, if I'm the one who says, hey, I'm the one who's in control of this, I'm the one who has complete ownership of this. And for probably a brief second, yeah, they might have control over my thinking because I'm thinking about them and I'm a little pissed off about it. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm going to let that just sit there for a second, but now you know what, I'm good with it. And I'm going to move on from it. Right. Because there's other things that I need to do. And so I think this also, it's one of the things you said too in on one of your posts was you talked about your own posting your own bail, which is kind of which is kind of connects to this, right? You said self-incarceration is a choice. And I remember reading that and I'm like, fuck yeah, it is. Like I was very like I read it and I just kind of like it was one of those things where like you stop and you then immediately reflect on it in your own life. And it connects exactly what we're talking about right here, right? We have a choice of how we want other people to affect us,
Mm.
right? That's completely our choice, right? And what we bring out into the world is completely our choice as well, right? So when you talked about or when you said that, right, like self-incarceration is a choice or posting your own bail, what were your thoughts behind that?
I have a couple friends that I love dearly, but are in this loop where their life is holding them back. They're frustrated, but they don't understand that they're the source and the solution for their own problem. So, you know, the key's in your hand, or the cell's not locked.
Yeah.
It's the same imagery. Like if you're unaware that you're the problem, you're going to stay stuck in your life, and it's horrible to see, and I can relate to it. But it's gotten to a point where um, it's costing me some of those relationships because the consistent negativity and unawareness and blaming of others is something you can only subject yourself to for so long before you kind of want to. I don't want to hang out with that guy anymore because I know before we even sit down, he's gonna dump the same problems I've been listening to for the last year, and that's kind of where I came up with that. It's like, bro, like you're the reason why you're not successful. It's very hard to tell somebody that, but it's your behaviors, it's your choices, it's the way that you're thinking. It's what's preventing you from getting where you really want to be and you deserve to be. And until you do something different, you're going to be right here. We're going to have the same conversations.
I love that. And that kind of connects too to that activation part, right? There
Yeah,
has to be
yeah,
some, and that was something that my father actually always told me: if nothing changes, nothing changes. Right. So there has to be
100%.
something, some action, right? And I think one of the things too that I've noticed in a lot of the people that we work with is when there is a problem and a challenge that they're facing, they don't necessarily connect themselves to the problem, right? Like a great question is, hey, is there any way that you could be a part of this problem? Right. And they say, well, no, I'm not in this department, or I'm not, talking to this person. Right. And
Yeah,
it's kind of, this idea, right? I like the way you kind of said it, right? Not only are you the problem, but you're also the solution.
yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
I think if more people can think around this idea of all of the problems in their life have a solution, right? And that solution is ultimately you, right? Whether
Yep.
it's thinking, whether it's action, whether it's a certain routine, habit, whatever it is, right? There involves some level of self-discovery or self-reflection to say, okay, what can I do better here to ultimately have an impact on this problem, to change this problem, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
All right, Matt. So one of the other things too that I picked up on from one of your posts was this idea around fear. And one of my favorite books is called Deliberate Discomfort, and it's written by Jason Van Camp. And in the
Hmm.
book, they have this quote in this book, and it says, "Fear killed more dreams than failure ever will." And I remember reading that quote, and then I read your post, and I just connected this idea around how we have these ideas of things that are scary in our lives and these things that cause us anxiety and stress. How many of those things actually happen to us, right? How many of those things are actually forced into our lives for us to fully experience, right? And do most of the time, do we actually just experience these fears as if they were actually real, but yet they actually never become real? Right. So it's this idea around like fear is almost this self-created idea. So what was curious about was how can we live a life where we actually embrace the idea of fear?
In the sense that fear is being driven by challenge, the unknown, failure. Um, what's always helped me out, especially as of recent, is being able to recognize that every fear, every challenge I faced was put in my path for me. It's that adage that life is happening for me, not to me. So in those dark times, um, that's where all the lessons are learned. And when you can master that and embrace that, and I'll be honest, it's really not easy. Um, but when you can embrace that at the next level, outside of your fear, when you get outside of that is gratitude. Um, being able to be thankful for the horrible thing that just happened because I learned this about myself, or I learned this about this person. There's always a lesson to be extracted, and it happens for everybody. Like, we're all the same.
Mhm.
It's just we're not conditioned to look for those things. So most of the time, it eludes us. There's lessons in everything that happens, even when people pass. And I'll be honest, yesterday was the anniversary. One of my buddies dying for cancer last year, first year. And I spent the entire year just wondering what good came out of this, because it really was. He was a police officer, just beloved by his family. It was gut wrenching.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I'm still there yet, but what I have been doing ever since this, I've been taking a lot better care of my health. Little aches and pains that I may have that I blow off, that I'll sit and worry about at nighttime, go and get it checked out.
Mhm.
He had symptoms that showed up that ended up being 3 or 4 different horrible things. By the time they figured it out, he was gone. 13 weeks, gone. So there is a positive message that can be extracted from some of the most horrible things that happen in life. It's just you got to look for it, and sometimes it may not be there. You may have to chew on it for a couple years to find what the lesson was, but it's going to be there.
Yeah. That was powerful. I completely agree with your statement around there is the possibility of something good coming out of pain, fear, challenge, right? And sometimes it might take a little while, right? It might not come out immediately. It might take months, years to actually find that gift or that opportunity. And I think the way you connect, I've never heard it said that way, Matt, the way you kind of connected fear to gratitude, right? I think that's very powerful because when you step into that fear and you experience it, right, you absorb it, you take in all of the uncomfortable feelings that that fear has, yet you make it out on the other side. Is there a possibility that you're really grateful to have experienced what you just experienced?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And then I think too, to kind of wrap this up, this kind of led beautifully into the last point I wanted to hit on was this idea around making yourself a priority. And it was very similar to, right, you said, hey, I got some aches and pains, right? I'm going to get this checked out, right? I'm going to take better care of myself. And this is something which I have found to be a trend of a very high commonality in some of the people that we work with, this idea of taking time for ourselves and actually treating ourselves like a priority, especially when we're working with people who are leaders, right? And we've been trained to want to support other people. When at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we have enough in our bucket to, pour into their bucket, right? So why do you think people have this almost guilt about making themselves a priority?
I think there's a stigma of selfishness that's just been generally embraced over time. And here comes one of those cliches. It's you're on the flight, you're putting your own oxygen mask on first. And it sounds so stupid and you kind of just shake your head. But when you think about this from a practicality standpoint, you can't be an absurdist to other people if you're not straight yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're going to bring whatever you haven't reconciled into every engagement, every conversation, every decision that you make.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get the results you're looking for. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It comes natural to some people to be able to do that and carve out time. I got to go read a book or go for a walk. I had to create systems to be able to do that, to purposely get myself straight in the morning time before I address the world, to make sure I'm having the best percentage shot of having a great day and making an impact. And the days that I don't, I'm carrying some anger or resentment over. I'm bringing that into the conversation with my wife. She's going to hear it and feel it. My kids are going to feel it. My coworkers are going to feel it. So it's really, really important to make sure that you're good with yourself before you go out and try to help other people, because you're not going to be able to give them 100% of you, and your intentions are going to fall short, and you may end up making someone's day worse by your own infection being passed on to them because you're passing your bad mood on. So it's that work from the inside out type thing. You got to start at home first. Charity at home. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the coach that I work with, she calls them the non-negotiables, right? What are the things that I need to do on a daily basis that are non-negotiable, right? That are a priority for myself. So to your point, I'm not bringing my shitstorm into your life, right?
Right.
I'm not bringing a bad mood and my pain or my challenge into your life, because I need to make sure all that is good. And then we have the opportunity to have an impact on one another when that time arises.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time today. I got one more question that
I
always like to ask people. One of the last things, what do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh. Integrity and making a difference. Um, I found even on my worst days, being able to make an impact on someone else's life that may be in a worse spot always lifts me up. So I'm trying to be conscious of that. Um, I want to be known for helping people, being of service, making a difference, and keeping my integrity in times where it's very easy to be lax with your integrity. And in my industry, it's very easy to lose who you are. It's very competitive. People sell out to get business from surgeons. Um, Honestly, I think the reason why my company is so successful is that we're one of the few that act with integrity, do things the right way. So I really embrace that. And it's something that I have to work for. It's not, you're not born this way. You just don't show up. It's something that you have to have some work behind, some thought behind, and some systems behind. But those are the things I think the most.
Hmm. Well, Matt, I can definitely tell you, just from this is the first time that I've met Matt ever, right? And I could just tell you just from your energy, your presence, just what we talked about today, I felt that integrity. So I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for your time today and, diving into those topics. Everybody go follow Matt on Facebook. Go follow Matt on Facebook if you want to have some quick little nuggets for the day, right? To kind of sharpen up your thinking. And Matt, any other areas if people wanted to learn more about you that you would recommend they go to?
Um, I mean, I have a LinkedIn profile, but I think Facebook for right now is probably the best way. Um, Unlimited. We're working on some motivational clothing. I'm just waiting for some things to line up. But my announcements will be put out there, and we'll probably take it to Instagram and things like that. But on the premise of being self-made, we're going to put some clothing around that to where people can kind of label themselves. This shirt is unlimited. On the back, it says drive. And we're going to do it. My wife and I are working on this, so it's kind of a fun project. But being able to tell people who you are versus being told, I think is kind of cool. And, updates will be posted on Facebook and, we'll make some announcements once we get a little bit closer to launch.
Show them, don't tell them, right?
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much today, Matt. Really appreciate your time. I think this is going to be really beneficial to the people who take the time to listen to this. And thank you to anybody who took the time to actually listen to this. And this is a wrap of the Acres of Diamonds podcast, where we have powerful conversations with interesting people. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.